Well, we're getting close to the end of this, aren't we?
Yeah, we're probably at the resolution now.
Well, being God isn't very fun, apparently.
Yeah, still talking about the root and all that stuff.
Whether they succeed or fail in their endeavor, those who reach the root become unable to return to the normal world.
Yep.
Maybe the first person to become God felt lonely and spread the word about the swirl of the root in order to have others join them there. Or maybe they had so much work to do as God, they just needed some help. None of it made any sense, no matter how long Soujuuro thought about it.
I don't know if she gave it that much thought.
まさかあの人は単に知りたかっただけよ。その後に残された人たちのことなんて興味はないの。昔から目標に没頭しても成果を愛する人じゃなかったから。
No capital T on truth, though.
あ
正直なところ、そのあたりはネキは突き抜けてるわ。
We noticed, yes.
本当の天才ってのはああいう非人間のこと言うのよ。苦労して作り上げたものの、その後を全く考えないんだから。
Soujuuro wasn't sure whether she spoke out of disgust or respect.
でも、そのくせ面倒見がいいっていうか、未来のことは考えないのに、今あるものには何にでも興味を持つんだから。
Aoko praised her sister's genius even while cursing her every being.
Yeah.
Though her tone of voice was perfectly pleasant and lacked any audible animosity.
そうだね。それに、トウコさんはこっちの方が好きみたいだったから。
She only wanted you because she thought you were mine.
Well.
As soon as he spoke, he was struck by the meaning of Aoko's earlier words.
I don't
care about the root. He realized that she must feel the same way as Toko. About the root, about you, about...
yeah.
And so... There was one thing that had been bothering Soujuuro regarding Toko.
そういえば、カエルにするって一体。
Right.
He ventured to bring up the topic no one had been talking about since it occurred. It had always seemed taboo to bring up, so the sense of transgression made him hesitate as he finally sought the truth.
一体も何も言葉通りの意味だけど、もともとルーン使いには変身術がある分、トウコにはかかりやすかったみたいよ。
Oh.
いや、そんな当然のように言われても。
His stomach hurt from the stress of not knowing how to respond to her cavalier attitude.
まあ、それでどうやって？
Wait.
Magic?
Yeah, it's like, how do you think they shoot energy bullets and stuff?
He didn't particularly want to ask, but it was the natural extension of this current line of inquiry. Aoko stared straight ahead as she lectured him, completely ignoring the pained expression on his face.
2種類あって、精神を入れ替えるのか、肉体を再編成するかね。
Yeah.
精神だけを入れ替えるのは簡単な分、すぐ元に戻れるわ。夢を見ているようなものだし、ちょっとしたショックで元の体に意識が戻ってくれるから。厄介なのは肉体そのものを変えてしまう方で、この場合、術が切れるまで元に戻るのは難しいでしょうね。私がやったのは、その再編成の方みたい。
I guess.
Oh, wow. Yeah. You're
多
guessing,
分塩基
huh?
配列を組み替えるんだろうけど、もう陳腐
I don't know. It's not my spell.
魔術が科学的な説明するのもナンセンスだし。
Aoko spoke as if it weren't her own actions she were discussing. Apparently, she'd only been borrowing magecraft from her future self and couldn't use any of it in the present.
Yeah. Yep, doesn't know that stuff anymore.
Her actions had also created a looming threat that would come back to haunt them in 10 years' time.
Oh.
Trying to comprehend even a fraction of all the intricacies involved made Soujuuro's head hurt.
あと数年後には青崎はそんなこともできるのか。
Well, probably.
恐ろしいな。
I mean, definitely, she stole her abilities from the future.
I guess, yeah.
Soujuuro was being completely honest with her. In response, Aoko only stared ahead blankly, eyes open wide. She looked like she wanted to scold him.
アリスならそれぐらい今でもできるわよ。
Yeah, Alice could do it even now, you know.
なんだと。
やっぱり
Oh,
ね。
now it,
そんなことだと思ってたわ。
all the color drained out of him.
前にも言ったでしょ。あんたはあの子を甘く見てるって。アリスの部屋のもろもろの人形はあの子に逆らった執事たちの慣れの果てなんだから。
Has he been in her room? I don't think he's
I don't
been in
think,
her room,
yeah, I don't think he's
Aoko.
seen her room, so.
まさかアリスはそんなことしないぞ。
Are you super duper sure about that, buddy?
Oh,
いやいや、これが。私もね、付き合い始めて半年はそう思ってたんだけどね。
The light, cheerful laughter that followed only made her statement all the more chilling.
青崎、その冗談笑えないぞ。
あら、私は笑わせる気なんてこれっ
you
ぽっちも
look
ないん
like
だ
you're
けど。
trolling him a little, yes.
She was clearly making fun of him at this point. Unable to determine how serious to take what she'd said, Soujuuro's mood and expression only grew darker. His obvious dejection made Aoko smile with satisfaction.
ま、あそこであんたの言葉にうなずいちゃうあの子がそこまで魔女になれるはずないんだけど。
She gazed at him as they walked, her chest warm with emotion. What emotion that is!
I don't know.
Eh. The path they strode had shifted from footpaths through rice fields to a road climbing the mountain. It was surprisingly wide given the mountain's small size, though with no shortage of trees on either side. The forest road led them up to the top of the mountain. Wheel marks were etched into the dirt underfoot. No doubt Aozaki's family came through here by car. The only light at the summit was that of the moon and stars overhead. The bald mountaintop lacked streetlights and houses as well as vegetation. Near the top, the incline of their path began to even out. The road ended abruptly at a house, still a good way away before them. It was too far to make out the shape of the building, but Soujuuro assumed it was Aozaki's house based on the warm light coming from the windows. You assume every house with warm light is the Aozaki's house?
Well, it's the house you're going to.
Doesn't mean that that's their house. It could be a neighbor, or like a rival mage gang or something.
ところで、君が家で団らんしている間、自分は何をしていればいいんだろ
He had a hard time imagining her engaging in any sort of family bonding time, but with effort he could imagine that it must be a joyful time for her. He didn't want to ruin that by intruding, which is why he brought up the subject now. If he had to, he wouldn't have minded spending the night camping outside. Her reply was not what he'd expected.
君はうちの離れに行って祖父に会うの。
Oh boy.
Why, though?
多分そこで今日までの記憶を消されるわ。
Oh, we're still doing that, are we?
Yeah, I guess.
She stopped dead in her tracks as she spoke. The frank and open attitude she'd shown all night was now gone.
Eh?
Soujuuro was too shocked to take another step forward. He turned back to look at her, having been walking a little ways ahead, and realized she wasn't joking. He stood still, taking in the glaring silence. Naturally, Aoko was the first to resume speaking.
驚かないのね、あなた。
う。いや、驚いたけど。でも、それは初めから決まっていたことだ。そうか。それで青崎は俺を連れてきたのか。
退屈しのぎは本当よ。それとは別に、祖父があなたを連れてこいって言ったの。
Soujuuro nodded in acceptance. He was as quiet and unchanging as the night around him, something which Aoko found thoroughly irritating.
それじゃあ行こうか。立っていると寒い。
宗十郎。
Aoko's voice stopped him in his tracks just as he was about to resume walking toward her house.
あなたはそれでいいの。記憶を消されるってことは、今までの1ヶ月がなくなるのと同じなのよ。
Soujuuro murmured in understanding. The thought of returning to his old self and forgetting about Aoko, Alice, and the mansion altogether felt like giving up a treasure that he'd discovered. But he didn't feel he was unable to let them go either.
確かにそれは嫌だな。青崎と知り合ってからの1ヶ月は楽しかったし、アリスとも約束したばっかりだし。でも、青崎が消えるわけじゃないんだろう。冬休みが終われば、また学校で会えるじゃないか。
There was no answer from Aoko. She didn't tell him that he wasn't the only one who'd be losing their memory.
Ah.
Intervention by her grandfather would erase her own memories of Soujuuro, too. Once it was done, they'd most likely never even speak with one another again. Each would become just another random student at school. Even if they did happen to meet by some lucky circumstance, things wouldn't be the same as they were now. She couldn't deny that a small part of her was gonna miss him, but then it wasn't, because she wouldn't remember him.
Well.
そう。なら行きましょう。
She rationalized her feelings away instead of processing them and set off once more towards the house. Soujuuro followed along at her side. It was a matter of several minutes before they reached their destination. She was irritated to see that the expression on his face looked exactly the same as it always did.
Yeah.
Forgetting their time together was sad for her, if only slightly so, but it didn't seem to bother him in the least.
そりゃね。平気で自分の腕を叩き折れるやつに、そんな繊細なこと期待していないけど。
Oh yeah, does he even remember that part?
Halfway through muttering her complaint, Aoko suddenly remembered. Or rather, she realized something. Something about the one-time werewolf killer before her. And the mystery of who Soujuuro Shizuki really was. The older version of herself that night had memories and knowledge of Soujuuro beyond what she knew now.
Right.
Something about this seemingly average boy's mistakes. Why he was able to do what he did and why he was raised in the mountains in the first place. She'd always wondered but never had a chance to ask him about it. Until now. Once her grandfather was through with them, all those questions she had about Soujuuro would be gone too. How though? That shouldn't be the case if older you knows about it.
Well, we're fucking with time, so you never know if it's actually gonna stay the same or not.
There was no point in asking right before they had their memories erased, but then again, she might as well if she was gonna forget everything anyway. This was her only chance to demand an explanation for his contradictory behavior.
待って。私も最後に一つ聞きたいことがある。あんた、山でどんな生活を送ってたの？
Weird how so few people have asked that.
You know,
until
given
now.
this is the 80s,
Yeah.
and the stay night was the early aughts,
Right.
it's entirely possible that he is from the same generation of insane, like, murder assassins as Soujuuro.
Yeah, Soujuuro.
And they've both got numbers in their names.
Well, yeah.
Ichi and Ju,
Yeah.
1 in 10.
I mean, I suppose. I don't want to make assumptions until we actually know what this guy did, though.
Her questions stopped him on the spot. She'd never seen him make such a pained expression.
つまらないよ、そんな話は。
Wow.
面白い話は期待してないって言ったでしょ。どうせ私も宗十郎のことは忘れるんだから、それぐらい話してくれてもいいんじゃない？
Her words and demanding gaze caused him to lift his head in surprise.
忘れるって、青崎が？
当然よ。あんたが忘れても私が覚えているんじゃ意味がないでしょ。お互いが忘れなくちゃ人と人の関係は立てないわ。行ってこいで公平じゃない。なんでそんな顔するの？
Soujuro's hand shot up to cover his mouth in response. He had no idea what kind of look he'd been giving her, but he had a feeling it had been pretty pathetic.
そうか。青崎も忘れるのか。
I'm suddenly less okay with this.
Right.
そこまでは考えていなかった。
ええ。そして私はあなたとは会わなくなる。断定はできないけど、まず間違いなくね。
Thus, this would be their last conversation. The way she spoke made it obvious, even if he hadn't been aware of what awaited him inside. Soujuuro might see her walk by at school and feel a desire to talk, but they'd have no reason to interact. Even if he tried to strike up a conversation, he knew she wasn't the type to bother much with other people. More importantly, he wasn't the type to strike up conversations in the first place. Not the way he'd been a month ago, at least. That was when he finally realized how cruel it was to forget something. Not only would he forget what they'd done together, he wouldn't so much as know her name or even be aware that she existed. Hey, but maybe Alice will stop by school to say hi.
Oh, well.
She seems to have taken a particular interest in you.
Yeah, Alice might forget too. Hard to say.
I doubt it. Alice isn't here.
I don't know how this whole magic thing works.
Even if he felt strangely drawn to her, he'd never understand why. And despite the fact that if some lucky twist of fate brought them together, things would never be the same. Their walk that night was no less than a funeral for the both of them. He'd essentially killed the person he knew as Aoko Ozaki, and she would kill the person she knew as Soujuuro Shizuki. Afterward, nothing would remain.
だからその前に聞いておきたいの。嫌だって言うなら、あとはこのまま家まで直行するだけだけど。
それは寂しいな。くだらない話だけど、会話がないよりはマシだろ。
Muttering under his breath, Soujuuro set off towards the house once again. This time it was Aoko who matched his pace. There were only minutes left before their path came to its end. The cold air turned their breath into white puffs that hung frozen in the dark night. Looking back on their conversation later, Aoko would think it seemed more of a confession than anything else. For Soujuuro, however, it was like one long, poorly told fairy tale.
山での暮らしは別にどうということはない。毎日同じことを繰り返して、毎日同じことを教えられた。そこでは明日はないんだ。始まりが朝で夜になれば終わる。一日は次の日にはつながらない。だから明日を夢見ることもない。次の日を楽しみにするなんて言葉はこっちに来てから知った感覚だったな。初めは馴染めなかったし、馴染む気もなかった。けどみんながまた明日と満足そうに口にする。いつの間にかそういうものを夢見るようになっている自分がいた。
Soujuuro kept walking as he spoke. He stared straight ahead as if telling his story to the night itself, not once turning to face Aoko. For her part, Aoko was utterly silent. She knew it was pointless to so much as nod or ask a question.
目が覚めていつもの一日に戻って、ふと気がつくと昨日までいた誰かがいない。訪ねてみると夜に体調を崩したらしい。たまにね、眠れなくなって家から出て行ってそれっきりな人もいたんだ。見なくなってしばらくした後、崖の下で見覚えのある遺体を見つけたこともあった。今にして思うとそれは異常なことだ。集まって暮らしていればそんなことにはならなかったのに、自分たちは関わらなかった。一日で完結する世界だったから他人は必要じゃなかったのかもしれない。山では食べるものも少なかった。飢えないためには他の人が寄りつけない場所に行くことが多くなる。その山では誰も他人から奪うことを考えなかった。口にできるものを探すとき、気を配る相手は犬だの熊だのだけで人を気にすることはなかったんだよ。 今はその逆になりつつあるけど、ともかく生活の半分はそれだけで済んでいた。
Soujuuro continued to stare straight ahead. He didn't seem troubled by his memories.
Yeah, I guess he thought it was normal back then.
To Aoko's ears, it sounded like he was describing a place no one in their right mind would want to live, as if it were perfectly normal, almost as if he missed it.
Yeah, it's...
But from that point onward, he slowly began to show more signs of distress as he spoke.
もう半分はまあ身を守る手段を教わっていた。
Okay, here we go.
学校の授業に比べたら些細なことだ。単に自分の体はどう動くものなのか、生き物はどう動くものなのかをよく見て、
He
よく
wanted
考
us
え
to
ろと言われ
learn
た。
where vital points were and how to
Yeah.
hit them exactly so that
Yeah.
things stopped forever.
Right.
単純な反復運動だ。小石を蹴ったり、森の中にこもったり、まあそんな意味合いのことをやっていたんだ。あの決まり事が始まると、朝も夜もなかった。外の変化に気持ちを向ける余裕はなくて、ふと気がつくと随分長く食事をしていないなんてのもザラだった。あ、ちゃんとご飯はもらえたよ。そういうのの後は。
I don't know, I feel kind of bad
あれ
for
が何
having
の
to
た
go
め
through
だ
all
った
that
の
shit.
かは今でもわからない。ただ山で暮らしていくには役に立ったし、そもそもあれだって生活の一部だった。生きるってことはそうすることだって思ってた。こうやって息をして歩くためにはあの繰り返しは当然のものだったんだ。
宗十郎、それは。
His tone was totally indifferent, but the strangeness of it all forced Aoko to interject.
Glanced at her and nodded as if to show
Oh,
he knew what she was thinking.
何かがおかしかったんだろう。あれは身を守る知恵じゃなくて、もっと違う用途のものだった。
Okay.
たまにいなくなる知り合いは山の土になったんじゃなくて、他の場所で他の理由で消えた場合もあったんだろう。でも考えることさえなかった。